Step aboard one of Australia's most remarkable long-distance rail journeys, one you may not have heard of, the Great Southern. This train is something of a rarity, operating only in summer. Unlike its famous cousins, the Ghan and the Indian Pacific, this train parallels the Great Dividing Range, offering a wonderful mix of inland and coastal views. In this video, I'll show you what the cabins are like by day and by night. I'll give you a taste of the sumptuous food and beverages on board, and take you on the off-train experiences included in the fare.
Welcome to the Hunter Valley
And to the Melbourne Cricket Ground. Extreme weather will affect our journey, but the show must go on. Although this isn't the show I had in mind. Today we're travelling on the Great Southern from Brisbane to Adelaide. It's a 4-day, 3-night adventure across southeastern Australia. A journey on the Great Southern begins at a heritage-listed villa in East Brisbane, Hanworth House. You'll check in here and be given your cabin allocation. The crew will take any luggage you have and ensure it's either put in your cabin for smaller bags or checked through to your destination for large luggage. It's raining, so they've erected these shelters. There are 2 classes of travel, Gold and Platinum, each with their own queues. Although since travelling, an additional class called Gold Premium has been introduced. Hanworth House is about a 10-minute drive from Brisbane's CBD. It started life as the family home of the Portmaster of Queensland, later becoming a hospice and nursing home for women. Once you're checked in, there are light refreshments on offer, as well as cold drinks, including punch and sparkling wine. The journey manager and the proprietor of Hanworth House each introduce themselves.
Thank you for coming out in this beautiful weather and joining us today. We're just waiting for our coaches to arrive so we can take you out to the train.
Dealing with Journeys Beyond for 3 years. Even though every other day of the week it rains, Monday mornings have normally been reserved for you. Not so today. But
in addition to cold drinks, there's barista-made coffee and tea. You may have heard the journey manager mention we'll need to board coaches. That's because the Great Southern doesn't come into central Brisbane, but instead starts from a freight terminal in Brisbane South at Acacia Ridge. Passengers travelling in Platinum, which is the superior class on Journey Beyond trains, board their coaches first. Boarding is done based on your allocated carriage. The drive to Acacia Ridge takes about 25 minutes. The reason that the Great Southern uses Acacia Ridge rather than Roma Street Station in central Brisbane is twofold. The train's length means it could not fit into one platform at Roma Street. In addition, the standard gauge line into central Brisbane is shared with commuter trains, and accommodating the Great Southern would be disruptive. Here's a look at today's itinerary, if things go to plan. Spoiler alert, they don't. The Great Southern was introduced in 2019. This makes it Australia's newest long-distance train. We catch the first glimpse of our carriages. As you'll appreciate, this is a working freight yard, so they need to drive us as close as possible to our section of the train. Although today is a public holiday, being the 1st of January. At the rear is a power car, one of the crew cars and the luggage van. These carriages were originally built for the Commonwealth Railways. They're the same carriages used to operate the Ghan between Adelaide and Darwin. The Great Southern operates between December and February when the Ghan does not run, as it's the wet season in the Northern Territory. The train is normally hauled by 2 custom liveried NR class locos. However, we won't get to see them until later. Today's train has 26 carriages, giving the train a total length of 663 metres, including the 2 locos. There are just under 160 passengers on board, being looked after by 35 crew. On this trip, we'll be travelling in a Gold Service twin cabin. In your cabin, you'll find a lanyard, water bottles, hand sanitizer, sunscreen, a booklet outlining the off-train experiences, and a card listing your dining times. There are a number of sittings in the dining car. If you're travelling with other passengers and you've booked together, you'll normally be given the same sitting times. We'll do a proper tour of the cabin and ensuite once we get underway. Today is New Year's Day. On New Year's Eve, there was flooding in Coffs Harbour, where we're headed. Coffs Harbour recorded about 200 millimetres of rain in the early hours of today. This causes a delay to our departure. Because of localised flooding in Coffs Harbour, there's been a track inspection of the line which was required before trains could traverse that section, which has led to our delay and subsequently the cancellation of the off-train experience, which was dinner on the beach in Coffs Harbour tonight. So unfortunately we'll miss that and have dinner on board the train instead. While we wait to hear from train control, let's head to the lounge car for a drink. There's a range of wine, spirits and beers on offer. Feel free to pause the video to take a closer look. And snacks to tide you over. All food and drink is included in the fare on the Great Southern. There are 2 of these Outback Explorer lounges on this train. This one looks after passengers in cars A, B, C and D. Each section is self-contained, with Platinum class in the middle of the train. Time for lunch, with a stationary view of the freight yard. Lunch is 2 courses, main and dessert. I'm on this journey with my parents and my uncle, so you might spot them in the video. I'll also show their meals if different to mine. Things get started with warm bread rolls. The crew take drink orders. I'm trying the rosé, which should go with my tandoori vegetables. My uncle's ordered the lamb. And my mum's having the tropical mango chicken salad. For dessert, there's a choice between the caramelised pineapple and sorbets, or the honey and macadamia frozen parfait, sandwiched in ginger biscuits. It's about 2:30 PM and we are scheduled to departure on our delayed departure from Brisbane about now, so fingers crossed. In the first part of our journey, we'll head south, crossing into New South Wales in the Border Ranges, continuing south into the Northern Rivers region before reaching Coffs Harbour tonight, where we were meant to get off the train for dinner on the beach. During the night, we'll head a bit more inland and should awake tomorrow in the city of Maitland in the Hunter Valley. Unfortunately, on the railway, things don't happen quickly, so it's more than an hour before our train starts our 2,724 kilometre journey, which will span 4 states. Gold Twin is the most popular cabin type. So about 3.5 hours after our scheduled departure, we've now departed Acacia Ridge Freight Terminal heading south. Better late than never. Now that we're underway, let's do a quick bathroom tour. So this is the ensuite bathroom on a Gold Twin cabin. Hi. We've got some conditioner, shampoo and skin lotion, as well as some tissues, face towel, hand towel. Got a basin here. Soap is also provided. Got some glasses there for rinsing your teeth. The toilet's down here. It's a vacuum toilet. As long as the green light is on, all is good. If it goes red, you need to alert a member of staff. In here, we find the towels. So we've got a floor towel, as well as 2 towels for using the shower. As this is a twin cabin, up here is the shower head and the controls are just here. In order to stop the toilet getting wet, there's this curtain which you need to pull around like so, and then make sure that you pull it across the toilet when taking a shower to make sure the toilet and the rest of the bathroom stay dry. Let's take a quick look at the Gold Twin cabin. As you can see, I've got a mirror here with a light and one of the charging points there. There's a few further 2 charging points here on the floor, just Australian sockets. We've got a little table which comes with a brochure with your off-train experiences, which you can choose before you take the train as well. And then there's a journey companion with information about the journey. You've got your dining card here, which has the times that you're booked in all your meals, as well as the times the musician will be performing in the lounge car or your lounge car, because there are a number of lounge cars. There's also a Journey Beyond magazine. This was meant to be for the coach that takes us to our beachside dining tonight, but that unfortunately has been cancelled as there was severe weather in Coffs Harbour yesterday and the train is now running very late. We've got a little cupboard in here which comes with some hangers to hang your clothes. Those are not my clothes, they're my uncle's. And down here is a safe if you want to put any belongings in there. There's a bin, put your rubbish. There's a little bit of space down here for a bag or so. You might also be able to fit some stuff under the seat, but it's limited room. In addition, you can probably fit some stuff up here. So there are pillows up there, but as you can see, there's a suitcase up there. And of course here we have the bunk bed, which the staff will make up for you when you're having dinner or whenever you'd like it made. And there's a second bed here, which the staff will also convert later. There's a cabin light as well as a night light, which is a blue light, so that you can see during the night without waking up your cabin mate. Given the limited space, it's recommended to bring a maximum of 2 cabin-sized bags or 1 medium bag into any of the twin berth cabins. And if we go down this way, in here we find a sort of refreshment room, I guess, where you can get tea, coffee, other hot drinks. There's some paper cups here. They used to have crockery, but now it's just paper cups. And we've also got a hot and cold water, filtered water dispenser here. I'll give you my thoughts on this cabin towards the end of the trip. Glad I'm not out there. Unsurprisingly, the landscape is waterlogged. Let's go for a wander through the train, currently in car C, which is towards the back of the train. This is a gold twin carriage. You might be able to see here, it's very wet between the carriages and it's dripping with water, so you have to be a little bit careful not to get wet. This is carriage B. As you can see, it's in a much lighter faux wood finish, I guess you could call it. And this is car A, which is a gold single car. It has this wavy layout, which maximises the space. Then we get to the back of the train, and this is crew only beyond this point. That's the luggage van. So this is car A, which is at the back of the train on the Adelaide bound journey. Now, one advantage of travelling in the gold singles is that you get a full-size bathroom, whereas in the gold twins you have an ensuite, but it's very small. Here we can see it's a full-size shower and quite a lot of room to get changed, etc. Wi-Fi is available in the lounge car, but there's a 500 megabyte limit and it's dependent on the train being in mobile range. The Brisbane to Adelaide Great Southern Journey is distinct from the Adelaide to Brisbane version, as our train has an extra night on board compared to the Brisbane bound version, and there are different stops with different experiences. There's an Australian flag here, but I'm not sure why. If you're interested in the Adelaide to Brisbane version of the Great Southern, there's a video on my channel. Our train is asked to stop and hold in a loop because of a red weather alert issued by train control. We get moving again about an hour later. This signal box dates from 1930 and is one of only a few of its kind left in Australia. Although made redundant by automation, locals decided to rescue and restore it as a small museum. Here's a photo before it was restored. We're currently traversing the Scenic Rim, a group of mountain ranges which are part of the Great Dividing Range. We're not far from the border with New South Wales. Australia has 2 railway spirals on which trains complete a loop to tackle steep hills. We're about to enter the Cougal Spiral. Built in 1930, the spiral allows the train to descend about 30 metres or 100 feet over 1.1 kilometres or 3,800 feet. The engineering achievement allows long and heavy freight trains to pass through this steep topography, and in 1999 the spiral was added to the New South Wales Heritage Register. We'll travel under the line we're on now and emerge here. There are 2 tunnels on the spiral. The first is 177 metres long, the second tunnel is 192 metres long. We crossed this bridge earlier. It's getting quite dark now. We've come to the lounge car for a pre-dinner drink. The remarkable thing about tonight's dinner is that the chefs had to source and buy ingredients for tonight's meals on New Year's Day, as originally the meals would have been provided by the local caterer in Coffs Harbour, so they've come up with a 2-course menu from scratch. Apologies for the shaky footage. For mains you can choose from beef ragu, Thai chicken curry, or vegetable pasta. For dessert, there's bread and butter pudding or strawberries and cream ice cream. Okay, it's now after dinner and it's time to check out the room. Now the room's been made up. We've got the lower bunk with some chocolates. They've left us the tour cards for tomorrow, and then we've also got the upper bunk up here. The bedding materials are very plush and comfortable. We've got a ladder now installed which enables us to get up to the top bunk, which as you can see is here. Once you're in place, all you need to do is lift up this railing so you don't fall out of bed if the train moves a lot during the night, or if you're, a person who rolls over in bed, which might be a bit of an issue. You don't really want to fall down all that way. There's a little nook up here for you to store stuff, and obviously just like down there's a reading lamp. There's also a call button for staff and even a little table. So that is the room when it's made up. We probably need to put up the railing so I don't fall out of bed overnight.
Tomorrow.
Good morning and welcome to the second day on the Great Southern. The weather's looking a bit better this far south. And here's a look at today's itinerary. We'll spend most of the day on an off-train experience. We're now in the Hunter region of New South Wales, north of Maitland. I think we've made up quite a lot of time overnight. I woke up quite a few times and we're always on the move, which I think is a good sign. As the staff will tell you, the first night on the train is often the hardest to sleep while you get used to the movement of the train, so hopefully the sleep on the second and third nights will be better. We're now stabled in a loop, presumably waiting for another train to pass, and it's almost breakfast time. So fingers crossed everything else goes to plan. Breakfast starts with your choice of juice.
Can I get you a juice?
There's a 2-hour window for breakfast, so you enter the dining car whenever you're ready during this period. There's both a starter and a main course. Tea and coffee are also offered. I'm starting with the chai bircher. And the blue swimmer crab for main. You might think we're moving. We're not. That's a passing coal train. The nearby port of Newcastle is the world's largest coal export port, with trains transporting the coal from the Hunter region. We're sitting on a loop or siding 212 kilometres north of Sydney. There's an announcement to be ready at 8:45 in the lounge car for disembarking at 10 minutes to 9. This needs to be done quickly, as the train will block a level crossing when it stops at the platform because it's so long. The Great Southern Fair includes a number of off-train experiences at key stops on the route. In the Hunter region, there are 4 experiences to choose from, as well as an optional upgrade for passengers wishing to do a helicopter tour. Each tour lasts about 7 hours, including coach transfers. I've never been wine tasting in the Hunter Valley before, so that's what I'm going with. Port Stephens by land is a guided 4-wheel drive tour on 30-metre high sand dunes, while Port Stephens by sea is a cruise on a catamaran. Newcastle Explorer is a walking tour. Every tour includes lunch, and all passengers will alight in Maitland and transfer to a coach. Here you can see how long our train is. We're just heading into Maitland for our first off-train experiences. I'm doing the Hunter Valley wine tour, so we'll be visiting a number of the wineries in the region and then having a long table lunch, so it should be good. So we just need to make our way to the Outback Explorer Lounge, which is the meeting point for off-train excursions, as that's where we'll hop off onto the platform at Maitland.
Hello.
Hello. The train has to make 3 stops to let passengers alight, given the relatively short platforms here.
Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Maitland Railway Station is 145 years old and is heritage listed. It's served by regular trains from Newcastle, which is about 35 kilometres away, as well as long distance services which stop here en route from Sydney to Armidale, Casino and Brisbane. Signs indicate which tour each coach is taking. The crew will tick your name off their list. Passengers are offered bottles of water before boarding. Now that all passengers are off, the train heads to a freight yard in Newcastle where it will stow until it's time for us to rejoin late this afternoon.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Hunter Valley.
Here's one of the many coal trains that pass through this area every day. There are 2 coachloads of passengers on the Hunter Valley tour. Each coach will visit the 2 wineries in the opposite order so that the numbers are manageable. Both coaches will meet at the 3rd and final venue for lunch a bit later. The driver takes us on a little tour and provides information about the region on the way to our first winery.
Flats here of the Hunter River.
Grapevines were first planted in the Hunter Valley in the 1820s. Today, the region is home to more than 150 wineries. Our first stop is Tulloch Wines for a wine tasting paired with chocolates. We try 5 wines, each paired with a different chocolate, which are also made locally. There are instructions on the placemat, but a staff member from the winery also talks us through each wine. Starting with a sparkling wine, Prosecco, followed by a sweeter white, 2 reds, and ending with a fortified. This is a Shiraz Cabernet, paired with a raspberry flavoured chocolate. This might sound like an odd combination, but they've carefully chosen wines and chocolates that work well together. It's really enjoyable. Our next stop is a 5-minute drive away, Brokenwood, a relatively young winery compared to Tulloch. Our next and final stop is for lunch. We'll be eating in Twine Restaurant, which is also home to Winwood Estate. This is where the 2 coaches of passengers on the Hunter Valley tours come together, as well as any passengers who did the helicopter tour. There are shared platters on each table, so you can take whatever you want. Dessert is panna cotta with passion fruit curd, meringue crumb and berry compote. These are the grounds. After lunch, our coach driver takes us on a quick tour of Maitland before heading to Broadmeadows Station in Newcastle, where we'll rejoin the train.
You'll get some great scenery as you drive down. There it is, there's your train, so that's good, they haven't left you behind.
The train is already pulling in as we arrive. Although this platform is much longer than the one in Maitland, the train still needs to make 2 stops. As we're at the back of the train, we'll board on the second stop. Newcastle is the second most populous area of New South Wales after Sydney. Here we see one of the classic electric V-sets, dating from the 1970s. Having started its journey from Central Station in Sydney, it's just 2 stops away from its destination at Newcastle Interchange. With passengers in the front half now aboard, the train pulls forward. And now we're underway again. This is one of the new Murray Young D Intercity sets built by Hyundai Rotem in South Korea that will replace the stainless steel V sets, one of which we saw earlier. These trains are currently entering service on the Newcastle and Central Coast line. So we're now passing through the Lake Macquarie area on our way south towards Sydney after a lovely day of wine tasting. It's great that we're on schedule again and that today's off-train experience was able to go ahead as normal and in fine weather. Our journey from here will take us down the Central Coast. We'll pass through Sydney and the Southern Highlands before travelling through the Riverina overnight. Hopefully, we'll awake in Victoria early tomorrow for breakfast, ahead of our arrival into Melbourne. You might notice that we got on the train at Broadmeadows Station and we'll get off at Broadmeadows Station, noting the Melbourne suburb has an S on the end. Gosford is the main commercial hub and gateway of the Central Coast. Gosford is known for its boating and the scenic views on the shores of Brisbane Water. Brisbane Water was named in 1825 after a governor of New South Wales, Sir Thomas Brisbane. Yes, that's also who the city where we started our journey yesterday is named after. Brisbane Water is an estuary and produces about 250,000 Sydney rock oysters every year. A short time later, we're on an arm of the Hawkesbury River, Mullet Creek. During the construction of the railway line between the Hawkesbury and the Central Coast in the 1880s, a semi-permanent town was established in this area to accommodate workers. It was home to 800 railway workers and their families for about 8 years. We're about to pass the only railway station in Australia that does not have road access, Wondabyne. There it is. Wondabyne is a request stop for local trains and mainly used by trail goers on the Great North Walk, which starts in Sydney and ends in Newcastle. The station opened in 1889. Here's a closer look. You can see the winding nature of this route as we follow Mullet Creek. After a short tunnel, we'll emerge onto a heritage-listed bridge across the Hawkesbury River. The railway bridge was the last link in a railway network joining the state capitals Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, and was a major engineering feat at the time. Here we see the piers of the original railway bridge, which was built in 1889. Until the first bridge was completed, passengers and goods transferred to a paddle steamer for a 3-hour trip up Brisbane Water to Gosford, though the boat trip was shortened once the line from Newcastle was completed to Mullet Creek. Many design faults with the first bridge became evident in the 1920s and 30s, and although the deck was strengthened, it became clear during World War II that the bridge couldn't cope with the volume of traffic. Construction of the second bridge, the one trains still used today, started in 1940, with 500 men working on the project, but it wasn't completed until 1946. This bridge is 60 metres upstream of the original bridge. At the opening of the original Hawkesbury River Railway Bridge in 1889, it was declared the greatest engineering feat in the Southern Hemisphere. The Premier, Sir Henry Parkes, proposed a toast to United Australia with the linking of 4 major cities. Some claimed it was his first speech advocating for the Federation of the Colonies of Australia. At the time it opened, it was the longest bridge in Australia, pushing bridge design and construction techniques to the limit. The 1946 bridge was also a major technical achievement. Its footings are still among the deepest in the world, and it remains the longest rail bridge on the New South Wales network. Here's the southern abutment of the first bridge, made of concrete but faced with Hawkesbury sandstone. That's still the Hawkesbury, we're on a causeway. The Hawkesbury marks the border between the Central Coast and Greater Metropolitan Sydney. We're now in the town of Brooklyn. I recommend visiting and taking the ferry to Dangar Island. That's Hawkesbury River Railway Station, which serves Brooklyn. And now we're in Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park. Australia's second oldest national park, there are lots of picturesque walking trails here, making it popular for day trips from Sydney. Cowan Station opened in 1890. From here you can hike to Jerusalem Bay. A short time later we reach suburban Sydney. Hornsby is about 23 kilometres northwest of the CBD. After freshening up, it's dinner time. We're now crossing the Parramatta River, the main tributary of Sydney Harbour. We're on the John Whitten Bridge, which opened in 1980. We can see the original railway bridge dating from 1886 next to us. It's now a pedestrian bridge and cycleway. As well as a 3-course meal, we get an unexpected appetiser. Many of the meals use ingredients from regions that the train traverses. I'm having trout as my entree. We all ordered this, so I can't show you the other options. Now for mains. Trying to be a bit healthy, I'm having the roast pumpkin. Here's the beef. And the roast chicken. Dessert. Here's the cheese plate. As you can see, it's a bit rough. We're trying the tawny port with dessert. I'm having the Eton mess with a twist. The twist being that strawberries have been replaced with peaches in this version. It was all delicious. Good morning. We're currently on approach to the New South Wales-Victorian border. The city of Albury is separated from its twin city, Wodonga, by the Murray River, with Albury on the New South Wales side and Wodonga in Victoria. For many years, Albury was a major interchange station because the colony of New South Wales adopted standard gauge for their railways, while Victoria adopted broad gauge, meaning everyone travelling between Sydney and Melbourne had to change trains here. The longest platform in Australia was built here to accommodate this.
Albury all change!
What's the hold?
Wake the children.
Grab the luggage. Find the ticket.
Get a porter.
We're changing train.
We're changing gauge. This is the border. This is the barrier between the states.
They won't be in your purse. I always keep them in this pocket.
Tried looking in your overcoat.
They won't be in my overcoat. I always keep them in this pocket.
I want to stay in this train.
But we can't, dear.
Why?
Because we have to change into another one.
Why?
Because this is as far as this one goes.
Why?
Because it wants a rest. I don't know. Come on.
Thankfully, there's no need to change nowadays. In 1962, a new standard gauge line was built between Melbourne and Albury, allowing trains such as ours to continue the journey non-stop. Albury Station opened in 1882. The station building, in Victorian Italianate style, is heritage listed. The platform is 455 metres long, about 1,500 feet, and covered for the entire length so passengers could change trains without being exposed to the elements. 2 daily XBT services link Melbourne and Sydney. In addition, these modern Velocity rail cars transport passengers from Albury to the nearest capital city, Melbourne, in just under 4 hours. There are typically 3 services each way per day, in addition to the XBTs. And here's the itinerary for today. Shortly we'll cross the border into Victoria, which is Australia's second smallest state after Tasmania, but it's Australia's second most populous state after New South Wales. There's the mighty Murray, Australia's longest river, stretching 2,508 kilometres, about 1,500 miles. We're close to the source of the river in the Australian Alps, and the train will cross the river again tomorrow in South Australia, closer to its mouth. However, we won't get to see the Murray tomorrow, as we're scheduled to pass through Murray Bridge in South Australia about 5:30 AM, so it'll still be dark. Time for brekkie. Starting with the yogurt parfait. And I'm having the frittata for Maine. This is the French toast. Here's a look at the Queen Adelaide restaurant car as we make our way through Victoria's high country. The crew provide an updated arrival time into Melbourne of 11:15, which means we're running about 30 minutes behind schedule. We're now coming into Wangaratta, a city of about 30,000 people, 230 kilometres from Melbourne. It's almost 9 AM and we're southbound towards Melbourne. Still about 2 hours before we get off the train for our off-train excursions. There are 4 options here in Melbourne, or outside Melbourne one of them is. I've chosen the MCG tour. There's also the National Gallery of Victoria tour, which is a guided tour. Old Melbourne Jail. Otherwise, you can stay on the train through to Geelong and just past Geelong, get off at Moorabool Valley, which is a winery at Clyde Park near Inverleigh. In terms of sleep, it was pretty noisy and rocky last night. Didn't sleep terribly well. It was an on and off type sleep, so I did get some sleep, but it was very intermittent. Also, I found that the cabins sort of go hot and cold, so you have to pull up the blanket, put the blanket down, get in the sheets, get out the sheets, because the temperature seems to vary quite a lot, so that was a bit of a struggle. Ideally, the carriages are meant to maintain a temperature of about 22 degrees Celsius. We're now travelling through the town of Glenrowan, which is famous for the siege of the Kelly Gang. The railway line played an instrumental part in the story. The Kelly Gang murdered someone here in Glenrowan, and they knew that the police would send reinforcements and then send them by train from Melbourne. So they planned to derail the train and ambush the police. But a forward-thinking local got word and stopped the train before it got here, and therefore the police were able to surround the inn where the Kelly Gang were meant to be, and then that started a siege which went on for some hours, and all the Kelly Gang were killed except for Ned Kelly, of course, survived and was later hung in Melbourne Jail. Kelly and his gang, with the help of a network of sympathisers, had evaded the police for 2 years before the siege. In the 12-hour siege and gunfight, the outlaws wore armour fashioned from plough mould boards. Nowadays, Glenrowan is a sleepy place with a population of just over 1,000 people. Trains no longer stop here, with the railway station closing in 1981. Talking of outlaws, the crew announced there's evidence someone has been smoking in Car A, the single cabin accommodation. Smoking is not allowed anywhere on the train. Much of the Albury-Melbourne line parallels the Hume Highway, the main road linking Melbourne and Sydney, visible behind the trees. Sheep outnumber people in Victoria. The state is home to about 15 million sheep compared to about 7 million people. At the time of recording, all passengers travelled on the full journey from Brisbane to Adelaide, But for the 2024-25 season, Journey Beyond allowed passengers to book the trip from Brisbane to Melbourne, with those passengers ending their trip at Broadmeadows, making it a 2-night instead of a 3-night journey. It's impossible to tell from this angle, but these tracks aren't the same gauge as those our train is travelling on. This is the line from Shepparton in northern Victoria. They're broad gauge, 1600mm or 5'3". Other than the interstate lines to Sydney and Adelaide, most railways in Victoria are broad gauge. Everyone doing an off-train excursion in Melbourne has gathered in one of the Outback Explorer lounge cars or the Platinum Club cars ready to alight at Broadmeadows Station in Melbourne's northern suburbs. The Great Southern will need to make 2 stops given the length of the train. We're about 17 kilometres from the CBD. As in Maitland, there are different coaches for each tour. Meanwhile, the train continues towards Melbourne before heading southwest to Geelong and stabling at a siding near the winery which passengers who will stay on board are visiting. A short time later, we're at the largest stadium in the Southern Hemisphere, the MCG. A Melbourne Cricket Club member takes us on a guided behind-the-scenes tour of the grounds.
When it's football, it's always the coach that comes out here and faces the crowd.
Despite its name, the most played sport here is Australian rules football. 6 AFL teams have deals in place to play home games at the MCG. It's a very impressive venue. The tour is a little rushed as we have to make up for the train's late running. Although being a train nerd, this is my favourite view. Next, we're off to a skyscraper in South Bank. Eureka Tower is almost 300 metres high. We're having lunch on level 89. Here, we're joined by the tour groups who visited Old Melbourne Jail and the National Gallery of Victoria. There's beef or chicken as mains, followed by dessert platters. I'm having the chicken. Another view of the MCG. Some more suburban trains. After lunch, we're free to explore the viewing deck on floor 88, called Melbourne Skydeck, and spruiked to be the Southern Hemisphere's highest public observation tower. You can also try The Edge, a transparent glass cube that extends 3 metres out from the building. After this, the coaches take us back to the train, which is stabled in a siding west of Geelong. Inverleigh is about 100 kilometres from Melbourne's CBD. Tonight's our last dinner on board the train, and then we'll arrive in Adelaide tomorrow morning. It's been a really enjoyable journey. There's been a few challenges with obviously the weather, which can't be helped, which led to the cancellation of the experience in Coffs Harbour, but what can you do when you have record rainfalls? And today we're a bit late coming into Melbourne, which meant that the tours were a bit rushed. We still got to do them though, and the MCG was a really good tour. We had to sort of rush around, but it was still definitely worth doing and enjoyable. And the lunch was really good, really delicious, with those fantastic views over Melbourne. What would I say about the twin cabin? It's probably fine if you're sharing with your partner. But if you're sharing with a friend or someone who's not your partner, then it's probably, it's a bit cramped. It just makes for some awkward times when you're like trying to get to the bathroom and get changed and navigate around each other. So if you're in that scenario, I'd actually recommend going for a single cabin. I just think it's just much easier. You have a bit more space, you have the whole space to yourself, you're not sharing, and you also get a full-size bathroom. Admittedly, it's shared with other passengers, but I still think it works. We'll just take a little bit more of a look around. It's comfortable, it has the basics what you need, enough power points, the beds are comfortable and so on. But I would say it's showing its age a bit. Yes, it has a certain old world charm. It's a bit rustic, I guess you could say. Obviously, we have the window with the roller blinds or shades, however you want to call them. You can play music here. Adjust your volume up and down. There's different channels. You might be able to hear that. And we can turn it off again by pushing the channel button. Obviously, it's a seat in daytime. You can put down the armrests, plenty of space during the day, and obviously becomes a bed at night. I think they're probably in need of renovation. They've been more or less in this sort of layout for quite a long time with this finish, decades I think, and it is sort of showing wear and tear, its age and so on. So it could definitely do with an update. But what Journey Beyond is doing is, rather than modernising all the interiors, they're modernising some of the cabins and then offering them for a higher price as Gold Premium. So you have to pay a premium to get a refurbished cabin. I understand the motivation for that, but equally, I don't know if you can keep offering this type of cabin at the price point. At some point, something has to give.
From here, we head through Ararat, past the Grampians, through Dimboola and into South Australia overnight. When we awake, we're likely to be in the Adelaide Hills ready for breakfast, before our arrival into Adelaide Parklands Terminal, just southwest of Adelaide CBD. Mount Elephant is a 380 metre high cone of a dormant volcano. We pass a long abandoned station. A wind farm. Dusk is a good time to spot kangaroos. Time to head to the lounge car ahead of dinner. Can't find kangaroos out there, but they're on the menu. These little tarts are an appetiser. They say Australia's the only country that eats its national emblem, kangaroo. But I'm going for the Wagyu beef bresaola. On to mains. My mum's having the vegetable curry. My uncle, the Atlantic salmon. And I'm having the duck leg. And dessert. My uncle's gone for the ice cream, but I can't go past the cherry, apple and blueberry galette. As it's everyone's final night on the Great Southern, people are making the most of it in the lounge car. Someone's brought a Bluetooth speaker out and is taking requests. It starts with sing-alongs and dancing. It's a bit much for me.
Good morning and welcome to the fourth and final day on the Great Southern. It's just after 6:30 a.m. and we're already in Adelaide Hills, not too far from Adelaide. In fact, I think that we'll stable somewhere near here so that passengers can enjoy breakfast before we arrive into Adelaide about 8:30. Last night was probably my best sleep on the train of the journey. I'm not sure if that's because I was really tired or the train track was better, who knows, but or I got used to it, but I'm just glad to get a bit more sleep. And got woken up by the announcement at 6:30 that the dining room is now open for breakfast. Because the train stopped, I think we're in a loop, but we're on quite an angle, and I've just had a shower. All the water in the shower room has pooled onto the far side of the bathroom. Hopefully you can see that, because the drain is here in the centre, whereas the water obviously pools there where there's no drain. I guess once we get going, hopefully it drains.
Time for the last meal on board. This morning, breakfast is just one course, no appetiser, which makes sense given we'll be arriving in Adelaide before 9 AM. Starting with a barista-made coffee, a swan. I decide to go all out and have the full breakfast. You can choose how you'd like your eggs. I'm going scrambled. While stabled in a loop in Belair, the overland running from Adelaide to Melbourne passes us. A final look at the Queen Adelaide restaurant. Time for last coffees in the lounge car. We pull out of the loop for the final run to Adelaide. From here, it's just over 22 kilometres or 14 miles to Adelaide by rail. Belair Station opened in 1883 with the Adelaide to Aldgate section of the Adelaide to Melbourne Railway. Belair is on the edge of the Belair National Park. The vintage wooden shelter dates from the 1890s. Although Metropolitan trains still run to Belair, they use a platform on the opposite side of our train, and as in Melbourne, run on broad gauge. The crew announced the bar and coffee machine are closing in preparation for our arrival into Adelaide. That's an Adelaide Metro diesel rail car. Because we need to get down from the Adelaide Hills, it's quite a circuitous route. This section includes 2 tunnels. You can often get views of the ocean from here, but it's a bit hazy at the moment. We're finally rewarded with views of the Gulf of St Vincent. As we descend into Adelaide's inner southern suburbs, you may be wondering how much this trip costs. At the time of editing, a 4-day, 3-night trip on the Great Southern from Brisbane to Adelaide in a twin gold service cabin starts at $3,590 Australian dollars per person. That's based on 2 people sharing the cabin. The fare includes all your meals and drinks, as well as the off-train excursions, so you shouldn't need to spend any money once on board. Solo occupancy would cost a lot more. That's an advance purchase fare, meaning you need to book at least 6 months in advance, whereas the everyday fare starts at $4,090 Australian dollars per person in a twin cabin. However, most people tend to book these trips well in advance. You can travel more cheaply by booking a gold single, with fares starting from $3,190. In addition, you can sometimes find sale prices for this train or get a deal that includes free accommodation in Adelaide or Brisbane before or after the trip. For example, on this trip, we got a deal with 3 nights free accommodation in Brisbane before catching the Great Southern on New Year's Day. That was based on an everyday fare. It's also worth noting that the Adelaide to Brisbane trip is slightly cheaper, as that's a 2-night rather than a 3-night journey, with prices starting at $2,490 for a gold twin. A pair of diesel rail cars operating a service from Belair to the city. And that's an electric service, probably heading to Seaford Depot. We're now coming into Adelaide Parklands Terminal. Adelaide is Journey Beyond's headquarters, and they keep most of their carriages here. Here's a carriage from the Indian Pacific which travels between Sydney and Perth. but the carriages on the Indian Pacific, the GAN and the Great Southern are interchangeable, they just have to swap the signage. Adelaide Parklands Terminal is the only station on our route long enough to accommodate all the carriages, so the train doesn't need to make multiple stops or split the consist. The service on board is really good. The crew are always very friendly and helpful. If there's anything you need, just ask. Here you can see all the trains that Journey Beyond operates. We arrived slightly ahead of schedule. Passengers with checked luggage can collect it on the platform a few minutes after arrival. Guests travelling in Platinum class get a chauffeured car to their final destination. Gold service passengers need to make their own way home or to their accommodation, with most using taxis or Ubers, as there are no easily accessible public transport options from this station, and it's a bit far from the CBD to walk. I really hope you enjoyed coming on this journey with me. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next video. Hope to see you then.